Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is very exciting. You are at a Virgin Radio Classic Artist, and I am utterly delighted to welcome Debbie Harry. Debbie, how the devil are you?
The devil had nothing to do with it.
I should hope not. First and foremost, congratulations on the book.
Thank you.
It's brilliant. I sat up all night last night reading it, and it's a beautiful kind of piece of art, as well as what feels like quite an intimate conversation with you.
I guess so. I'm glad it's conversational.
Yeah.
It seems easier to read, I think.
Yeah, and talk to me about how you went from, you know, from your childhood, which seemed to be pretty stable, pretty happy, pretty kind of normal.
Yeah.
To ending up kind of like tearing it up in CBGBs into the New York scene. How did that path take you? How did music first grab Debbie Harry?
I think it grabbed me as a little girl. It wasn't too difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was there a moment that you remember? What was the first song where you thought, actually, I want to sing that song?
Well, I started in the church choir, so I think I always loved singing and music. So, with the advent of popular music and youth-oriented culture, I guess oddly enough, it was probably something like Peggy Lee or something that first grabbed my ear.
And when you first got to New York, there's a great bit in the book where you talk about one of your first jobs was work for the BBC,
right?
Which you left because you didn't have time for that. You didn't have time to work at the BBC. You had life to be getting on with, which I kind of liked.
Well, yeah, it was an education, and it was very interesting. I didn't feel like it was a career for me.
Yeah.
And I was obviously more interested in my kind of culture.
So you said that you tried to get out and see as many bands as possible, to kind of soak up what must have been just a brilliant period to be living in New York. What was it like?
Well, I guess I don't know if you call it the love generation, but it certainly was the one of the high points of the hippie culture, and there were lots of free concerts in the parks, and lots of variety in the music, and then of course the Fillmore East and the Anderson Theater a little bit, and all of the clubs in the West Village.
Yeah.
So there was a lot going on, but I'm sure it was the same here.
Yeah, I think New York. I guess there were scenes going on in New York and London at the same time. But I think whilst punk was happening in London at the time, that seemed to be what the big explosion. You had punk or prog rock. Over in New York, you had this kind of like this. Well, what was the new wave, which always seemed to be just intoxicatingly glamorous.
Ah, well, good.
How did it feel being part of that? What must have been quite a small unit of number of bands that kind of created this sound. What would have been you guys, maybe Talking Heads to an extent.
Talking Heads came a little later.
Yeah. So who were in your orbit at that time?
Oh, television, Johnny Thunders, the Ramones, that kind of thing. Let's see. Early on, there was an artist named Helen Wheels and her band, and even earlier than that, there was Cherry Vanilla, and
what a great name.
Yeah. So there was a lot. Kept moving pretty quickly. There was a group that was three brothers called the Fast. It progressed.
Yeah. And creatively, when you guys first got together, when you first got together with Chris and then Clem came along and various kind of members, you settled down after a couple of years. But what was it like in those kind of early years in the rehearsal studios with the band and kind of developing an entirely brand new sound, which is really difficult to do nowadays because so much of it's already been done. But you guys seem to, you found this really cool groove. What was it like in those rehearsal studios?
Sometimes very cold.
Did the music come? Did the ideas come quickly? Did you bounce off together? What was the writing process like?
Well, I think initially we were doing a lot of cover material.
Yeah.
And sort of learning our craft, and doing all kinds of shows, early on, different kinds of, top 40 clubs and bars.
Yeah.
And then, CBGB's actually became a hub, and we started writing and recording our own stuff. I think it really had a lot to do with who the members were at the time. As you said, we had a variety of players.
Yeah.
So that was always kind of part of the spontaneity and the the way that it would force us to write songs.
Some of your biggest songs. I mean, a lot of people still won't know that some of the biggest Blondie hits were covers. Things like "The Tide Is High," "Hang on the Telephone," "Denis." How did you kind of approach your covers? Because you covered them so well that you are now far more synonymous with those songs than the original artist. How did you apply your kind of ethos to those tracks? Did anyone in particular kind of bring them to the studio and go, this would be a great Blondie song?
No, actually, Chris found "Tide Is High" on a compilation. It might have actually been Virgin. And so that was the John Holt song. And let's see, the Denis song was actually, Denis was Randy and the Rainbows.
That's it, yeah.
So we covered that. I brought that in. Let's see, the Nerves with "Hanging on the Telephone." I don't know. We just heard a version of it, and we were touring in Tokyo, and we had this, the cassette playing in the back of a cab, and the taxi driver was, got into it, and he was tapping his fingers and everything. We thought, oh well, they seem to like that.
Because the big difference between the Nerves and the Blondie version is not a lot, except for your vocals, because the original approached it with kind of a bit quite punky and emotional, whereas you kind of have this almost kind of separated kind of, your style of vocal is completely different, which you've made synonymous with yourself. Was that something that you did purposely, where I think you talk about it a little bit in the book, where it can sometimes come across as shyness, but or almost kind of a detachment from what you're doing? Was that something you purposely kind of tried to do?
I don't know. I think I was experimenting and trying to figure it out for myself. It seems to me the way I heard it, so it didn't. I don't think it was a great deal of decision making. I did what I could.
Did what came naturally.
Yeah.
I'd love to talk to you a little bit about Parallel Lines, because that clearly was such a huge kind of like turning point for you guys. I mean, 20 million copies sold. Was there much push and pull with the making of that? Because from reading up and reading the book and kind of from what I can kind of glean, there was a bit of kind of the tectonic plates were jarring slightly with the producers and who I guess were trying to be a bit more poppy than you would have liked at the time. What was that like to make the album?
Oh, Parallel Lines, wasn't that with Mike Chapman?
Yeah.
No, I think we were really very happy to work with him because of his track record as a hit maker. And
was that important to you guys? Did you guys, because a lot, I think you watch footage back of kind of bands and you hear the songs, and everyone was so super cool. The whole Studio 54, the CBGB's kind of crowd were kind of really cool. So, but was it still important to you to actually, we want #1 records?
Well, yeah. I mean, we weren't sort of trying to be an art band. clearly we weren't. But it just seemed, yes, at that point, because we had regular players, the band had sort of taken form. We were all very interested in that. Although, as you say, the tectonic plates did vibrate at times, but I think that that's the best way to have a band and to, sort of be identifiable, have an identifiable sound. When you have a band that has a director, or music director, or a leader that has firm ideas about what it is, sometimes there's a danger of not, having this blend. And I've always felt that the value of a band is to incorporate everybody's sensibility, but that takes a little bit of time and effort to, let that happen.
Yeah.
And to not be too precious about your ideas. An ensemble situation is not always easy.
And it can't have been easy as an ensemble either to have you in the band. I guess as such you became such a focal point for all of the attention, all of the press, all of the artwork and the photographs and stuff. That must have been quite difficult for you, because you were part of a band.
Right. Well, it seemed very natural. I mean, most of the time the focus is on, or very often the focus is on the lead singer, the front person. So
Yeah.
that didn't seem that extraordinary to me.
Did it ever get on your nerves?
Did it get on my nerves?
Yeah.
Well, I had to do more work than anybody. So that got on my nerves.
Yeah. And then kind of, I guess, as the albums kept coming and stuff, obviously then Chris fell ill, and you guys decided to kind of.
Well, that was much later.
That was about 3 or 4 albums later, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Was it quite easy to walk away from?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, it just seemed to fall apart in many ways.
Yeah.
So several things happened simultaneously, so it seemed like the obvious.
And then, one of my, you had like some great solo songs, French Kissing in the USA, which was kind of, when I was a kid, was one of the rudest songs I've ever heard. It was kind of like, it used to make me blush when it came on Top of the Pops, because we didn't talk about French kissing in Derby in 1984, 5, was it?
I don't know.
But then just out of nowhere, Maria comes along, and you're right back in the thick of it. That must have felt incredible.
What? Blondie didn't record French Kissing.
No, you did that as a solo, and then you came.
A solo thing.
Yeah, you came, did the solo thing, and then I saw you as solo.
I'm sorry, I upset you.
No, you've not upset. No, it didn't upset me. My God, it made me have lots of very complicated thoughts as a teenager.
Yeah.
But then there was a kind of period of time where we didn't hear from you so much, and then out of nowhere in 1999. Was it 99? Maria comes out of nowhere, and you're straight back in the thick of it. And how did that feel? That must have felt brilliant.
Oh, it did, actually. It was very exciting and very rewarding. And I remember the first time that we all played together, just in a little studio. It was very wonderful to hear that sound again.
Yeah.
That composite of players, and I thought, wow, we really did have something.
Yeah. And it's that kind of magic, kind of stardust when you're all in the same room that kind of really creates the sound.
Yeah, it was a bit of a revelation, and moving ahead, we had a lot of old contracts and things to straighten out. Have you ever been in a band?
Yeah.
It's
a
how it
nightmare.
is.
It's chaos.
It's complicated. It's complicated, and so we had to straighten out a lot of issues. And fortunately for us, we were working with Alan Kovac at the time, and he, seemed to be a pro at this. He had, revitalized a lot of old bands that had similar problems, and it worked for us. We were very lucky.
And you're still out there giving it some now. I saw you play with Phil Collins, I think, a couple of years ago at Hyde Park, which was great.
Yeah.
Are the creative juices still flowing? Does it still feel good?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're looking to start recording again. We have some tracks and ideas that are ready to go, and I think we're also going to cover another song by Johnny Marr.
By Johnny Marr?
Yeah.
Wow. A Smith song or one of his?
One of his.
Oh, great.
Yeah, one of his. And we did that on the last album too.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
And you, as kind of your legacy, kind of Blondie's legacy and your legacy, you must be very proud when you hear other bands kind of cite you as a huge influence.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, we had. I think it's an ongoing process. Hence the name pollinator, because we had been in turn pollinated and passed it on and pollinated others.
Yeah.
And then we also wanted to link it up with this, the problem with the bees and the environment.
Yeah.
So that was a nice touch, I think.
It's a good touch. Save the bees. It's very important.
Yeah.
And you yourself personally have been such a kind of torchbearer for kind of amazing women in music, and you in some ways kind of you trod the path that allowed people like Madonna and Annie Lennox and all of these amazing kind of artists to kind of to carry your torch. How was that? Did that feel pressured? Did it feel good? Were you aware of it at the time that you were so pioneering?
Well, I didn't think of it like that. Fortunately, I think I was at the right place in the right time, and there wasn't a whole lot of competition.
Yeah.
But it got very exciting, that these girls were so wonderful and had just made all these great albums and great music.
So at the time there was like maybe you, Chrissie Hynde, Patti Smith.
Yeah.
And then
there were others. I mean, there was the Slits and oh God, the Selector.
Yeah.
And polystyrene and stuff.
Yeah.
So it was all fabulous. All fabulous.
And unbeknownst to you at the time, there would be like a 10-year-old Madonna kind of watching you on telly, going, "That's what I'm going to do."
And did it.
And did it.
Really did it.
What's your favourite Blondie song? What's your favourite song that you've done?
I don't know. It varies. I go back and forth. Of course, we have great reverence for Heart of Glass.
Yeah.
And Rapture.
Can I talk to you about Rapture for a second?
Okay.
Because we talked about kind of like what the two different scenes in London and New York. So in London, kind of punk was going on, and punk very much kind of had kind of like an affinity with dub and reggae.
Yes.
Whereas in New York, kind of like the new wave scene was very closely tied in, like you guys, with disco and with rap. With those kind of scenes.
Yeah, I think rap came a bit later. But
yeah.
That sort of really tight rhythm track.
But you listen to Rapture, which was like it was almost like a Venn diagram of new wave rap and disco. That was such a pioneering, and obviously, the first rap to reach #1.
Yeah.
The first ever mention of Fab Five Freddy.
Yeah. Also, the first a rap track that had its own music and wasn't just taking lines from Chic or somebody else. So it wasn't just a scratch thing. It had its own music.
Was it quite?
It went on from there, actually.
And was it quite a fun or a friendly kind of thing to do? Was there much competition, or a bit like, why is this white band kind of like trying to be rap? Was it kind of everyone's kind of in it together and everyone's helping each other? Because disco and rap and new wave should theoretically have been kind of quite separate, but they seem to kind of all merge.
Well, not too much later, really. But and there was some controversy and some, didn't want to have anything to do with that.
Yeah.
But, it did it sort of, it seemed natural and sort of automatic as being, you know, a very metropolitan sound or an evolution in that direction. I think there's always purists, and thank God for that. But I can't honestly say that Rapture is a real rap, but it's more of an homage to it.
Yeah.
And I think rappers have actually, you know, told me that that was the beginning of rap for them, and then sort of like they would, you know, do more of an investigation, and because there were quite a few things that were recorded by then, but never in the charts.
Yeah.
And so we sort of broke the ice, which I'm very proud of.
And then Heart of Glass, which you used to call that disco song, was that right?
Yeah, we thought it was, but I mean, it really wasn't. But
well, I mean, because there's a version on the remastered album of the original, kind of when it was called that disco song. I mean, it's all there, but
Yeah.
then who was it who kind of like, this would sound great if this had a little synthesizer digga underneath it? It was that really kind of
yeah.
kind of lifted it in there.
Well, that was a little drum machine,
Yeah.
actually.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Did you used to hear your records in the clubs in New York at the time? Did you ever dance to them?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, I don't think at that point I was going to Studio 54 very much. I don't think I ever really went there a lot, but
Did you see the documentary about Studio 54?
yeah,
Oh, it's a great documentary. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
yeah.
Those days will never come around again, will they? It must have been such a.
I don't know.
It must have been a good time to live.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. But I mean, aren't there great clubs now?
I'm far too old to know. I've got no idea. Never too old?
No, I mean, you know, it's a different time in your life. You're not looking for that kind of social life, and basically that's what it's about, going out and meeting people. You've probably met a lot of people already, and your
Yeah.
career is flourishing, and you've come into a different time in your life. But I think it's all out there.
Just
really,
need to find it.
always.
Talk to, how was it doing the book? Was it good fun? Are you someone who enjoys looking back, or
No.
was it quite a painful experience? Was it?
Initially, it was kind of painful and a drag, and I really didn't like doing it. Didn't want to do it, but it was based on interviews.
Yeah.
And then you know, we sort of reworked it and edited it, and I started doing some compositions to include. But primarily, I think that my favorite thing about it is the fan art.
Yeah.
And I just love it, and very happy that I got a chance to put it all together, let people see it. And I'm looking forward to the days when somebody walks up to me and says, "That's my drawing that's in there."
Oh wow, yeah, that'd be great.
And you know, because a lot of the times they were sent to me by children, by young guys, young kids, young girls, and you know, I think that would be kind of fascinating for me, because many of the things are unsigned, and there's absolutely no way that I could find who they are or, you know, what their intention was. But I think they, you know, loved me and loved the image, and, you know, were just, you know, drawing and fooling around. So.
And finally, Debbie, what's your favourite song in the world?
Oh God, that's a terrible question. That's a horrible question.
Well, today, what's your favourite song today?
Well, I don't know. Recently, I found my friend, my keyboard player, Matt Katzbowen, turned me on to a song called "The Barrel."
The Barrel. Okay.
By Aldous Harding.
Oh wow, okay.
And it's quite nice.
Oh, I'll go and check that out.
The video is very strange and lovely, and it's terrific. You know, that's my most recent.
What do you think of the state of music at the moment? Is it healthy? Is it good? Is it?
I don't know if I want to put a value on it. It's always evolving, and new artists are coming up, and great songs are appearing, as well as, you know, established people putting something out. That's the wonderful thing about music.
There's room for everyone.
Yeah.
Debbie, you're still super cool. Thank you so much for coming
Thanks for having me.
on. It's a great book. Everyone needs to go and read this book. But Debbie, Harry, thank you so much for being today's Virgin Radio
Thank
Classic
you.
Artist.
You're welcome, and thanks for having me on.
The Chris Evans Breakfast Show and the best music. Virgin Radio.